here. So basically we're just taking a drive now. Basically we're driving to pick up a lawnmower. My weed eater, for some reason motors just absolutely hate me. So no matter what I do, I'm always breaking shit, which kind of sucks. So I ended up breaking the, I don't really know what happened. It's getting warranted though. I took it to a shop to go pick up a replacement from them. We'll see here if we can. We got a bunch of school zones and stuff, so we can't really hammer on it yet. So basically the issue that I was having with the car was overheating. And you know, there's a lot of things with the car overheating. I mean, obviously you've got a boatload of potential problems. You know, it could be that the radiator's insufficient. It could be that something's wrong with the coolant system. The coolant leaked out. You have no more coolant. That kind of stuff. But in my case, I was actually at a drive-through McDonald's because I eat shit food a lot. And basically what ended up happening was my food ended up, I'm just like in the drive-through, I'm just going, man, like, why isn't my AC working? You know, it's like hot as shit. And it was just pumping like regular air like a fan. And what I ended up doing was I needed to make sure my phone doesn't fall. So what I needed to do was get the system to turn the fan on. So what ended up happening was the coolant wasn't actually being cooled when I was parked. So the fan itself wasn't turning on. And it was a huge pain in the ass. So what ended up happening was the ground connector, so it was a 3-prong setup going into the two wiring harnesses. So the two connectors sit in like that, and basically when they're received, you've got two hot wires and one ground. So one is a high voltage, which has a relay that throws, I think, like 40 or 50 amps at it, and then you have a low velocity fan. So basically if you're overheating and the AC's on, it'll put that high fan on, and then if not, if you're just kind of chilling in traffic, AC off, it'll put that low speed fan on. And so what ended up happening was that ground had kind of melted around the connector, and the plastic that had melted would basically cover up that ground, so it wasn't getting a full connection, and that was causing it to kind of intermittently turn on. And I mean, there were a couple of points where I'm driving around, and because my oil cooler is mounted in front of my radiator, when I'm sitting parked, basically the radiator heat is bleeding into that oil cooler, so it effectively becomes an oil heater at that point. So my oil temp was getting up to 225, 230, and I was like, what the hell is going on? And so I ended up, and also the radiator temp, the temp gauge was like, I mean, that basically maxed out the temp gauge. So I'm sure that was putting the coolant up to 260, 270 or something ridiculous. I didn't have my torque gap on because I was going to go to Home Depot and like McDonald's. So I wasn't going to beat on it, so I didn't put the torque gap in. But, you know, had I have had a regular water temp gauge, I would have been able to see that specifically before it kind of got to a rather high point. So, you know, kind of moving forward, what I ended up doing was I took it to Hyundai because I was trying to diagnose it, and all the wiring seemed fine, everything seemed good, but I didn't check the plug itself. So the lesson learned is if you're having electrical issues, not only check the connectors and how the connection's going into the plug, but how each of the connectors are going into itself. And in this case, it was definitely very tricky as to how everything kind of fit together. And it was just a little bit of plastic covering up that meetup point on that locking connector. So I ended up basically creating a ground, I'll post up a picture here, a ground clamp, basically that I cut the wiring harness like right before the connector from the fan, and I crimped on an 8-gauge ground, and then heat shrinked it and put it back in the loom, and then bypassed the connector clip. So the connector clip still has the hot wire and still has for the low temp and high temp, or I'm sorry, the low speed and high speed fan settings, but the ground is now its own independent ground. And that's definitely a benefit there. But it seems like it was working great. Here's my ghetto MacGyver section. What the fuck are you doing, asshole? Don't like fucking do that. Alright. basically that was my overheating issue. It was a pretty easy fix. But I mean, hey, when you modify cars, it's these things kind of day in, day out. You know, obviously, once you get, if you redo everything and you do everything perfectly, yeah, there's not going to be any issues. But, you know, a lot of the times when you have those, a modified car, you know, something else is gonna eventually give way. And in this case, it was the connector, which I would have never thought, because the connector is sitting right in front of the fan. So it just, it should have cooled itself, but I guess at some point, you know, it is kind of hotter air than normal going through. But I don't know. I don't think it should have been that bad where it would have melted, but you know, it's just a connector. I can always put some crimp connectors in there, or create my own connector and then just, you know, heat wrap the crap out of it if I want or whatever. So there's a lot of options. Oh my God, these people are so fucking slow. I guess they're going the speed limit, so I can't be mad at them. But it is annoying when you get two people going the speed limit next to each other. It's like, dude, just get out of the way. Oh, so also another exciting piece of news. So I just heard the other day that, well, bad news is a friend of mine damaged his engine a little bit. But the good news is it's a super cheap fix, and we're actually going to film it here on Initial DIY Mods. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to, we have to tear down the engine, we have to pull the engine out. Now, I showed a little bit of that, how we did it before. I'm not going to make a how-to on that because obviously it's a very integrated process and it's a lot to film, and we're kind of on a very short timeline. However, what we're basically going to do is, you know, we're going to pull the turbo kit off, we're going to pull out the factory block and the short block, and we're going to be able to just rebuild that. Now, my theory is that the car is still holding pressure in the pistons, so it's holding about 50 psi on the cylinder that's blown, and all the other ones are holding 160, 170, whatever they were. So in that sense, get out of this dude's way. So in that sense, it's working. You know, it's an easier fix than it could have been. But oh, we're on Queenston. Let's do that. But basically, one of the benefits though with what are we talking about? Right. So we're building this engine, and what we're gonna do is I believe the rings are what's messed up in the car. So we're actually gonna reuse his stock pistons. We're gonna take the whole thing out, take it all apart, and basically put in some new some rings from JE Piston. They're the same people I got my pistons custom cut from, but instead of getting the whole piston, and the issue with the whole piston is, you know, a full set of pistons is like 900 bucks for this car, and that's at the discounted price, assuming you get the connecting rods, which are another 600. So you're already in $1,400 for getting a new set of pistons and rods, which, once again, you know, I mean, we're tearing it apart, we might as well build it anyway. But the other side of it too is, you know, if you don't have the cash ready for a build like that, then there's no point really in getting that, you know, spending that money that you don't have. So what we're going to end up doing is just replacing the rings. Now, if his piston is damaged, I still have my 6 factory pistons and factory connecting rods. So if any damage, we've got 6 potential. That car looks stupid as fuck. If we got truck, whatever. If we've got these 6 pistons, you know, chances are if he has one damaged, one of mine will work in his with minimal machining. The other thing too is there's an engine builder that's going to help us with the work. So the benefit is he builds some crazy shit. So apparently he's had some on features with RX-7s on Import Tuner magazine, as well as a few other magazines and stuff. And you know, he's been building engines for years, and you know, whether it's the Wankel engine on the RX-7 or it's the conventional piston configuration engine. So there's definitely a lot of potential, you know, and it's a great relationship to have, to be able to meet somebody like that. So he wants me to come down to the shop and not only take a look, but you know, he wants me to learn about actually putting the engine up to the short block. Now, beyond the short block, I have some experience with it because I've had to do it myself, but in this case, you know, he's really helping us out with getting the you know, the rings filed and getting everything put together. And to be honest, I just don't have the tools to fully take apart the engine, and I don't have the experience to confidently say, yes, I can do this. Now, mechanically, I'm pretty sure I can do it, but once again, it's not my car, it's not my engine. I'm not going to assume responsibility for his engine, and if something happens, if I put the ring in at the wrong angle, or if the ring wasn't filed down at the right distance, and you get ring bind, and then it blows the engine again. So I really want to make sure it's done right. I want this guy to, cop up ahead. I just really want to make sure everything is done well, and quality is good. So just a thing, it seems like this guy's very experienced, and not to mention he's gonna allow us tour the shop. He's gonna let us film in the shop, and he's gonna allow us to really not only show his work, but also teach us a few things. And to be honest, I'd love to improve my TIG welding, because I am passable at best. There is no stacking dimes. There is nothing nice about my TIG welds. My MIG welds are about as good as look as good as my TIG welds. So I'd love to be able to improve that. Not to mention, I've only had minimal work with large-scale machinery, lathes and CNC machines. So it'll be great to really to work with them, and I'm excited and looking forward to it. You guys should too. So I'll make sure to post that video. We're looking at pulling the engine this weekend, and then we're also looking to later on work on pulling that, filming that video and everything the following weekend. So hopefully within the next month I'll have all that edited, and everything will be awesome and uploaded. And God, I cannot find a free space to really. Oh, here we go. This is kind of a populated area. Let me just get around this semi truck real quick. If I give it a second gear pull, like it just burns the tires. I don't know if you guys can hear the exhaust and the blow off and all that stuff. I got a couple of new microphones, so I got to try them out kind of individually and see what I like, and see what picks up the best and what's the most convenient. I have a lapel mic, which obviously records voice really well, but it seems to muffle a lot of the exterior noise, so I don't know if it's going to hear the car as much. So maybe I'll have to record with two mics in the future, but we'll see what happens. Hopefully it's not that bad. You guys let me know in the comments if the audio is good, if you need it to be louder, if you want more of like an engine bay mic or something. I'm not sure how to configure that, but we'll figure it out. Thanks, y'all. I appreciate you tuning in. We're almost at a lawnmower place.